Is your debt causing you sleepless nights? Knock your debt out with Debt KO. And your debt won't be the only thing keeping you up at night. Debt KO, free impartial advice on all your debt.
Oscar BEVIS for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. Delighted today to be joined via Zoom by Steve Bunce. How are you, Buncey?
Never been better. We live in strange times, Oscar. Strange times.
Yeah, it is strange times, but boxing's picked itself up again. We're sort of not back in the full swing of things. We ain't had show clashes, really, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
It's really odd because even though we've only been back since whatever it was, July, it feels normal. This abnormal stuff now feels normal. So being at a fight with 60 people, being in a little zone, taped into a little box and having no fans there just seems normal. And I'm wondering in 6 months or a year if that will become completely normal and people will forget what it's like to be around other fans and have interaction. I can do 5.5 hours in BT studio or your call doing a fight, and the only people I talk to will be the 6 or 7 boxers. It's ridiculous. You go in one door, you go out another door, you don't see anyone, you don't speak to anyone, you don't get any food or drinks delivered. You just interview fighters and you leave and people talk to you in your ear. It's been really weird. It's been really odd. Some shows you've bought into, some shows you've been sucked in. Also was at Dillian White and Povetkin working for 5 Live. So some shows you're dragged in from the first fight, and other shows you're remote, you're distant, you're not really that involved. And at the end of the night, it's not been such a great experience. But then you analyse it and you realise that was a really good 10-rounder. That was an essential 10-rounder for that boxer at that point in his career. What we don't know, after all of the MTK shows, after all of the Frank Warren shows, and after all of the Eddie Hearn shows, is what we haven't yet come up with. And it's a bit like a podcast. Is we haven't come up with the definitive format. So, of course, you'd all like to see a great big heavyweight shock. You'd rather Dillian White had knocked out the Russian, just like the Russian knocked out Dillian White. So we think that's what we want at the top of the bill. Then we think we want the kind of 50-50 ridiculous 6-round, 8-round scraps that we've seen occasionally, not on every show, by the way. And then we think we want to see some quality boxing. Then we think we want to see Carl Frampton, because he's a great practitioner, even though he wins every second of the round. We don't really know what we want. There's no format. So if there was a format, very wise multi-millionaires like Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren would deliver it every single week. There's no kind of format. And matchmaking's a bizarre art. The matchmaker in boxing is one of the most underrated and at the same time most over-criticised human beings. And he or she needs to get it right. And it's not as easy. You know, you can't put 2 guys who you know dislike each other, who are 7-0 in the ring together. Sometimes you get a standoff. Look at McKenna against O'Hara Davis. Everyone was talking about strap yourself in at ringside, put your goggles on, put your helmet on. And in the end, we had a standoff fight with about 7 clean punches. Who'd have thought that? I mean, if you think of it, it was obviously a possibility. So you need a bit of luck in matchmaking. You need a lot of luck in matchmaking. And the luck sometimes is pure luck. And I don't mean you make your luck. It's pure luck. Something happens on the way to the ring and the 2 guys deliver. So it's been strange, Oscar. I agree with you. Some of the nights have been unbelievable. You get in a taxi at 11:30, 11:45, and you're buzzing, you're flying. You can't wait to get back in 2 weeks' time. And other nights, you're a little bit down. Well, that wasn't very good. And, he should have got him out of there. That went too long. So it's been like that. What I do feel is I feel that the fans themselves may be missing out. I watch every show back. And sometimes the night itself was better, much better than what you actually see on TV. And I'll give you for instance, Heffron against Denzel. It was a great fight. It was a fight. It sucked you in. There was a good narrative going into it. Every single second of that was competitive. On TV, it wasn't such a great fight. That's the only fight I've been at where there's been a spontaneous standing ovation at the end. It's the only one. You know, on BT and on Sky, you clap them in, you clap them out. But on that one, there was a spontaneous eruption of clapping from everybody that was there. And that's the first time I'd seen that happen. And that's because it was, I hate to use this word because it makes you sound like you're old. It was a trade fight. It was one that purists and connoisseurs really savoured. I loved every second of that one.
You talk about this format and that no one has come up with a definitive format yet. Well, we're going to talk about Boxxer and what they're putting on with UB7. It's a new format for behind closed doors now. We're going to see these 3-round fights, semi-finals, and a 5-round fight as a final. They could be punch-offs. They could be standoffs. We don't know what we're going to get, but it's something different. So I suppose from that perspective, that's exciting alone.
Well, this is, listen, this is a 7-fight night, remember. You're allowed 7 fights under the new rules. That changed a couple of weeks ago. And what the boys at Boxxer are delivering here, if you think about it, they're trying really hard. They're giving us a Love Island winner. Not a guy who went on Love Island once and decided to be a boxer. A Love Island winner who had 26 amateur contests. And if you watch some of Jack Fincham's amateur contests, the guy's got an awful lot of style. It's just that he was very busy pursuing his life away from boxing. Now he's focused. He's done all of his Love Island commitments, which is nearly 2 years of commitments post Love Island. Terrific for him. Puts a few quid in his pocket. He's got to support a young baby and all of that stuff. So now he gets his stuff together. He's locked away with Ben Davison, and he's got plenty of work with Ben, with Jack Fincham. He's not working from scratch. He's working with a kid that's got a lot of idea. So that's the kind of sexy odd fight. That's the big one. That's the one that draws in lots of maybe people that are sitting on the fence, not sure if they like boxing or not. That's absolutely perfect. Then you've got Florian Marku, who single-handedly, if you gave him tickets and you gave the other 10 best ticket sellers in the country tickets in their pockets to go and sell, it would be neck and neck between him and Josh Warrington. You understand me? This kid Marku, he just delivers. If you've ever been at a fight where Marku fights, you're wondering where everyone is until about 5 minutes before he steps in the ring, and suddenly the place is swollen, full, heaving, people hanging from the rafters. He delivers everything. And in the ring, he delivers everything because he does so many things wrong and he does so many things right, and he just mixes them up, and he never fails to deliver. Even if he chases a guy for 8 rounds, it's an entertaining chase. When he starts clobbering people, people like it. Then you've got 2 guys who could this weekend or next weekend or last weekend have fought for the British title. Let's get that absolutely straight. The punching preacher, Derek Assasi, he could be fighting for the British title. There's no 2 ways about it. He's got the credentials like other guys that have fought for the titles, no problem. And Mikhail Lawal, the same thing at cruiserweight. The pair of them could be fighting for the British title. I don't mean in 6 months, 3 months, 9 months. Right now, right today, we could be talking now about them fighting for the British title at the weekend. Okay, so that takes care of the so-called undercard. Then you come to this new format. 4 boxers, 2 semi-finals of 3 rounds, and a final of 5 rounds. I like that. That's really good. Sometimes in the old UB sections, those fights, sometimes boxers got too tired. Sometimes some of the early bouts didn't quite work. And then later in the tournament, people were too tired. We've seen that. We've seen that in Lawal in his final against Damian Chambers last year, a long time ago, when Chambers had nothing left in the final. If that had been earlier, it would have been a much better fight. We've seen that. So I like this 3-fight competition format. The Border Control, thankfully, sanctioned it, which makes an awful lot of sense. So just to recap what you're going to get on November 10, you're going to get a Love Island guy, Jack Fincham, coming into the ring. Sadly, we don't have the space at ringside for 250 celebrities, but it would have been fun to have them there anyway. Not that that's my job. I don't interview them. I talk strictly, as you know, to the fighters. So we got the Love Island guy. Then we got one of the biggest ticket sellers in Europe at the moment, Marku. In fact, that makes him a bigger ticket seller than anybody in America because, as anybody knows about anything about American boxing, apart from Terence Crawford, no one else in America sells a single ticket to any of their fans. Because, no disrespect to Charlo brothers, they could hire a scooter and take all of their fans to their next 2 world title fights. They might be decent fighters and they're great fighters, don't get me wrong, but they're lacking in charm. And they haven't got that great big following. Kelly Pavlik, who seems to have been about 300 years ago, he was the last guy that sold proper tickets. Crawford does the same thing. No problem with that. Marku sells all the tickets, brings all the people. His fans wear white suits. That's the men. They wear white suits with gold shoes and no socks. You know that, don't you? Then that's like standard That's standard Albanian clothing. You've got to love that. That's just hilarious. And then, as I say, I'm a big fan of Lawal and Asazi. Those are terrific. Those are terrific fights. If they're in half decent fights, and I think that's one thing you've got to do. If you've got a couple of unbeaten prospects, as we've found and discovered in lockdown, you've got to put them in fights that semi-matter. You know, it's, you know, the young guys like Dennis McCann, 5, 6, 7 fights, they can fight guys that have lost 140 odd times, no problem. But the Lawals and the Asazis can't. We don't have that much leeway under lockdown. So they need to be in, if not 50-50 fights, 70-30s, 60-40s. They'll win those fights anyway. They'll win 50-50 fights, for God's sake. They're good fighters, you know. There's only a couple of middleweights, there's only a couple of cruiserweights that I wouldn't back them against. Not necessarily to win, but I'd put them in with any of the cruisers or the middles, apart from the very, very top 1 or 2. So they need to be in good fights. So if we can get Fincham in a lovely gold gown with his, get him off straight from a sunbed, looks terrific. Marku with his men in white suits. It's a short, fantastic 3-fight tournament. I've got a feeling we might have 4.5 hours of fun on November the 10th. And you know what? Whether you like it or not, that's what we want. We want stoppages. If we can't have knockouts in every fight, give us a bit of fun. Do you remember those mad nights we used to have on BoxNation with the Russian shows? And so there'd be 7 dancing women, 7 dancing Cossacks. Then there'd be a guy sitting there singing as he's playing some accordion with tears coming down his cheeks. And then Roy Jones would come out and rap. I haven't even talked about the boxing and you're laughing. There you go. You had fun. You liked it. You can't remember the fight. You can remember the show. And that's a little bit what we got here with Boxxer.
And for the tournament, it's actually like the standard UB profile as well. You've got a clear favourite in Zach Kelly. We've had that before with Mikhail Lawal. You've got the inexperienced Ben Rydens. We always get someone who's come in and taken that opportunity. Someone who's more experienced than Charlie Schofield. And then you've got someone you consider avoided in Diego Costa. So there's always that same sort of label on all the fighters as well.
You know, that's a straightforward narrative. You know, when you go, you know, in this business, you go and interview someone, so you know his name, you know his record, you know when he's fighting. And in this day and age, you need more. There was a time 25 years ago when that was enough. You go along, you sit down with a kid who's about to fight for a British title and you get a few details from him. But now you need a narrative. And there's plenty of narratives attached to these two. I mean, this great load of, I mean, it's probably rubbish, but who cares? This Diego Costa met Martin Murray when Diego was a waiter out in Spain. It's a great story. Now they're training together in Oliver Harrison's gym. And you know what? Don't shout it too loud. I don't care if it's not true. I don't care. What a great story that is. Martin Murray's ordering beers and paella, and suddenly he gets talking to this guy who's his waiter, or as we say in London, he's baked potato. And the baked potato is Diego Costa. Fast forward 2 or 3 years, they've done loads of sparring together, and now he's being trained by him. Love that. How can you not like that story? Zach Kelly. If you look at Zach Kelly, right, when he turned pro a couple of years ago, it looked like he was just going to be fed the normal kind of guys. Then suddenly, in about his 3rd or 4th fight or 5th fight, he's fighting Umar Sadiq, 2 unbeaten guys, over about 8 rounds. I think they'd only broken sweat in about 3 or 4 rounds up until that point. That's one of those fights that slips under the radar. That's one of those fights that we need sometimes in boxing to use as our defense against our critics from the UFC, from the dark side, who say that we never put on competitive fights. Well, I'm telling you, we did something there that Dana White would have loved to have done. We matched unbeaten Umar Sadiq, who's selling tickets, charismatic, can talk, against Zach Kelly, who can sell tickets, charismatic, can talk and can bang. We matched them. I think it was like, I haven't got the details in front of me, like 4 or 5 fights each. That was fantastic stuff. And it was a great fight. They both had too much pride. I loved it. They've both gone on to good things since then. They might have lost since then, but they've both gone on to good things. And one day down the line, what about those two for a British title fight in 18 months, a year's time? Absolutely love it. So Zach Kelly starts as the favourite, absolutely. But you know what? In these 3-round tournaments, we had them for Prize Fighter, which started in about 1911, it seems to me, with Ant Lever and Eddie, when Eddie wasn't even shaving every week at that point. Now he has to shave about every 2 hours. That's how long ago it started. So when Prize Fighter started, you know, you're looking at things and you know that the half-decent pros, if they get a good first round, they've won that first contest. Well, the same thing could happen to Zach Kelly. What if Zach Kelly's... what if, I don't know, what if Charlie Schofield or Ben Rydens, I'm assuming they're going to keep them apart, What about if they just work really fast in the first round and Zach's trying to load up, suddenly he's a round down? That makes it interesting. And as for Diego Costa, well, the best thing they can do with Diego Costa is not tell him it's 3 rounds. It's tell him it's only a 1-round fight. Then at the end of the first round, tell him, no, they just added a round. At the end of the second, no, Diego, they just added a round. You can't believe that's what I would do with Diego. He'll fight 50 rounds, wouldn't he, against anything that lives and breathes. But as any of these tournaments, the UB tournaments that we've had so far, the 6 we've had so far, and with the old prize fighter format, all bets are generally off. Only a couple of times have I ever seen the favourite, even though Mikhail Lawal won, don't get me wrong, he had a really hard first fight where he needed a knockdown to get slipped by on a split decision, or a majority decision as we call it, in 3 rounds. Only a couple of times have I ever seen the favourite not only win, but dominate. And that was once Gavin Rees did it, the former world champion. He just played with his 3 opponents one night, I think at Earl's Court in central London. And the other time was Audley Harrison, I think, in the second of his victories. He just had mastered the 3 threes. The man was an Olympic champion, by the way. So generally, even if the winner scrapes through in the end, there's always drama. You know, I can remember Herbie Hyde going out with a cut eye one night, I think, at York Hall. And the list is a very long list of good fighters that have gone into this tournament. There's plenty of British champions have lost in this tournament, overweight, and not lost their title, or this type of tournament, I should say. But I like this shortened version, Oscar. I don't know about you. I like this shortened version. And I tell you what, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind a night where we get 2 of the shortened versions. That would be real good.
Is your debt causing you sleepless nights? Knock your debt out with Debt KO. And your debt won't be the only thing keeping you up at night. Debt KO, free impartial advice on all your debt.